Hello to all of you. So we were discussing about the tools and techniques of your recombinant DNA technology, and the first thing I was discussing was about the restriction enzymes. Now, if you see it carefully, you see that there are some restriction enzymes which cut both the strands of a DNA molecule at the same site. Okay, so the resulting end will have a blunt end or flush end. So you can see here a blunt end cut has been produced. Some restriction enzyme cut both the strands of a DNA molecule within the same site. So at the same site, cleavage has been done by some type of restriction enzyme, like for example HAE3 obtained from Haemophilus aegyptus, and thus produce what we call as blunt ends. So these are the blunt ends. Now blunt ends can also be used for recombinant DNA production by modifying these blunt ends. How it can be possible? By using linkers and adapters. So there are certain things called as linkers, okay, and adapters that are specifically used for making this blunt end into sticky ends, which will have a overhanging end. Okay, what are sticky ends? I have already discussed with you that sticky ends will have an overhanging end. Okay, and to make this type of blunt end into sticky end, we use linkers and adapters. What are linkers and adapters? Let us see. So there are also other enzymes as well. I'm not going through it. I will go later on. So linkers and adapters. Linkers are actually short chemically synthesized double-stranded oligonucleotide which contain one or more restriction endonuclease sites. So what are linkers? In my definition, in my opinion, linkers are short chemically synthesized double-stranded oligonucleotides which contain one or more restriction endonuclease site where the restriction enzyme will identify and cleave. Okay, like for example, if there is a linker 5 prime double C G, sorry for again I am to write 5 prime double C G double A double T C double G again. So you can see the G double A double T C. This is within the linker there is one restriction site for the eco R1, for the eco R1, right? So normally linkers, what they are done, linkers are generally fused with the blunt end DNA fragments, and as the linkers are joined with the blunt end DNA fragments, now the blunt end DNA fragments will now have a restriction site where restriction enzyme will cleave them and will cause to produce a sticky end. So simple thing, blunt end, if I show you the diagram, you can able to imagine. Okay, use the number A diagram. You can see two linkers are used. These are the foreign DNA, and in that foreign DNA it has produced the blunt end. No protruding or sticky ends has been produced. So we add linkers. Within the linkers there is restriction sites. We join them with we join the linkers with that foreign DNA, okay, with the help of DNA ligase enzyme, and then as the linkers have certain restriction enzyme sites, that with the help of the restriction enzyme sites ECOR R1, or it may be any other restriction enzyme that may cut depending on what type of sequence present in the linkers, it cleave, and thus we make a foreign DNA having a cohesive, or you can say sticky ends, and thus we can easily introduce them into the suitable vector DNA which has been cleaved with the same enzyme. Otherwise, it will not produce that type of ends. Okay. So what does here it has been written about the linkers. Both linkers and adapters are chemically synthesized short double-stranded DNA molecules. Okay. Linkers process restriction enzyme cleavage site. So it has at least one or two restriction enzyme site that can be ligated first to the blunt ends of the any DNA molecule. Now ligation is done by DNA ligase, and then it can be cleaved with specific restriction enzyme to produce DNA fragments having sticky ends, right? So in this way, linkers first join with the foreign DNA of our interest having blunt end with the help of DNA ligase by catalyzing that phosphodiester bond formation between them, and then they are cleaved by specific restriction enzyme to produce the DNA fragment having sticky ends. Now, this is about the linker. What is about the adapter? Let us see. About the adapters, adapters are also, in my opinion, adapters are also short chemically synthesized double-stranded DNA, which already have ready-madely they have the sticky ends. So linkers, for linkers we have to make that cleavage by restriction enzyme. In adapters they have the sticky ends, we have to join them only with the help of ligase enzyme. So that's why it is written here, adapters contain preformed already made sticky or cohesive ends, and they are useful to be ligated to the DNA fragment having blunt end, right? And the DNA fragments held to linkers or adapters are finally ligated to our desired vector DNA molecule. Okay, so adapters already have that sticky ends, one or both sticky ends, depending on what type of foreign DNA we are using. If the foreign DNA has a blunt end, the adapter has on one side it has that sticky end, and on other side it has that blunt end, and join them in, and thus it can be used. They are ligated with the help of ligase enzyme. If I draw the diagram in a simple way, suppose this is our desired DNA having producing blunt ends. So with the help of adapters, it is ligated. Now the adapters have on one side they have normal end, and on other side they have the sticky end, just like this, and they are ligated with the help of ligase, and thus now we produce our desired DNA having these sticky ends. Okay. Now there is a problem that occurs sometimes that has not been written in this book, that these sticky ends are very much active. They can join with any other sticky end molecules having complementary ends, obviously. So to in order to prevent the unwanted ligation of a further adapter molecule to a sticky end produced, the 5' terminus of the sticky end is blocked by hydroxyl group. So with the help of hydroxyl group, with the help of OH group, the 5' terminus of the sticky end is blocked so that unwanted ligation does not occur. After the adapters have completely joined with our our desired DNA, then this 5' OH group has to be removed by phosphorylation with the help of polynucleotide kinase, so that the DNA insert can be ligated to the vector. So simple thing, to in order to prevent unwanted ligation of this adapter DNA molecule on that 5' sticky end, the 5' terminus of the sticky end is blocked by hydroxyl group. After the adapters have been attached with our desired DNA, this one, then the 5 prime ends are phosphorylated by polynucleotide kinase so that the DNA now can be ligated into the vector. So this is the diagram, number B diagram you see. Number B means you have to see from right side. You see the foreign DNA and these are the adapters. The adapters already have one or both sticky end. It now here the adapter that has been shown, it has shown only one sticky end. They are ligated by using DNA ligase, and now we have that foreign DNA with sticky ends, with cohesive ends. Okay, the OH group that was present on this 5 prime terminus of these adapters, they are further removed by an enzyme called polynucleotide kinase. We all sometimes represent them as PK, and thus we can now introduce them into the desirable vector. Okay, so this is about the linkers and adapters. Let's talk about the DNA ligase. Now, DNA ligase you have already learnt in your molecular biology classes, and sometimes you have also you have understood in your microbiology class as well. And the DNA ligase normally what they do, they covalently join the DNA fragments, okay, by the help of this ligase enzyme. And this enzyme was actually originally isolated from the virus. Now, in recombinant DNA experiments, the ligase enzymes that were used, they were actually previously they were isolated from virus. Now, this ligase also occur in E. coli. This ligase also occur in the eukaryotic cells we know nowadays. Ligase plays an important role in DNA repair process that we also know, right? In our DNA repair mechanism, like your nucleotide excision repair, base excision repair that you have learned in your fourth semester. These ligase enzyme actually also contribute in your DNA repair process. Now, what is the action of DNA ligase is permanently to hold the DNA pieces together by phosphodiester bond formation. This is so since hydrogen bond formed between the complementary bases are not strong enough to hold the strands together. Yes, the hydrogen bonds that has been formed between the complementary bases, they are weak bonds. So DNA ligase, what they do, they seal the DNA fragment by forming a phosphodiester bond. They form a phosphodiester bond between the 5 prime phosphate group carbon of 1 deoxyribose sugar with the 3 prime hydroxyl group carbon of another deoxyribose sugar. So the phosphodiester bond is being created. The phosphodiester bond is being created between the 5 prime phosphate group carbon of 1 deoxyribose sugar with the another deoxyribose sugars 3 prime carbon that have the hydroxyl group. That means on one deoxyribose sugar there is on their 5 prime position there is a phosphate group, and on another deoxyribose sugar at the 3 prime position there is a hydroxyl group. These phosphate and group and the hydroxyl group are participating in the formation of phosphodiester bond. Okay, so here it has been shown. So this is one deoxyribose sugar, this is another deoxyribose sugar. See the 5 prime, see the 5 prime phosphate group of this deoxyribose sugar. They are participating to form hydrogen to form phosphodiester bond with this 3 prime hydroxyl group of another deoxyribose sugar to form this bond, to form this phosphodiester bond. Now there are different type of DNA ligase like lambda phage DNA ligase. It has shows that phage T4 DNA ligase, they require ATP as a cofactor, while E. coli DNA ligase is dependent on NAD+. Obviously, they require energy. For the lambda phage T4 lambda phage for the T4 phage DNA ligase, it is a bacteriophage. It requires ATP to carry out this phosphodiester bond formation by ligase enzyme, while needs E. coli DNA ligase needs NAD plus for its activity. In each case, this cofactor ATP or NAD plus is split to form an enzyme AMP complex. This enzyme AMP complex brings the formation of phosphodiester bond. So whether you are using ATP in case of T4 phage DNA ligase, or you are using NAD plus as needed by the E. coli DNA ligase, this cofactor, that is the NAD plus or ATP, they are it is splitting into AMP, okay, to form an enzyme AMP complex, and that enzyme AMP complex brings the formation of phosphodiester bond. The action of DNA ligase is the ultimate step in the formation of recombinant DNA molecule. Without DNA ligase, you cannot join your desirable DNA to the vector. Okay, understood? Next is your homopolymer tailing. Homopolymer tailing. Now for homopolymer tailing, what we need terminal deoxynucleotide transferase enzyme. So synthesis of single stranded tails at the 3' end of blunt end fragments can be done by your enzyme known as TDT, terminal deoxynucleotide transferase. This process is called tailing. We are actually converting the blunt end into a sticky end in this way also. So what does TDT do? This terminal deoxynucleotide transferase, they extend the 3' end of the blunt ended fragments, and thus they can produce sticky ends from the blunt ends. So TDT, what they do, they extend the 3' end of the blunt ended fragments, and thus producing sticky ends. So it extends. And this reaction is normally done to produce sticky ends, to produce protruding ends of a particular sequence. Okay. So what does here it is written? The complementary DNA strands can be joined together by annealing. So the complementary DNA strands can be joined by annealing, and this principle is utilized in homopolymer tailing. This technique involves addition of oligo DA to the 3' ends of some DNA molecules and addition of oligo DT to 3' ends of other molecules. The homopolymer extension by adding 10 to 40 residue can be synthesized by using terminal deoxynucleotide transferase. Homopolymer tailing achieved by annealing is illustrated in this figure. Let us see. So you can see in this figure that this is a DNA where you are adding DATP, that means deoxyadenosine triphosphate. With the help of terminal deoxynucleotide transferase, what we do, we are extending the 3' end with adenine. So the 3' ends are adding with adenine. A to the power AN means multiple adenine residues are being added to the 3' end. In the same way, here also you can see there is another DNA molecule that we can seen. We are adding DTTP, deoxythymidine triphosphate. With the help of TDT enzyme, we are extending with thymine. Then what we do, we are mixing and annealing, and thus we join them, we can able to make a circular DNA molecule, we can able to extend them, and we can complementary, by complementary base pairing we can join them and ligate them finally to our interest. So that is the homopolymer telling. And the main thing is actually to convert them into sticky ends. Okay, the basic thing of as given in this diagram here, okay, it is of extension function, but the main thing is we have to convert the bluntine into sticky end. For that reason we use TDT. It just adds on the nucleotides at the 3' end. Okay, we have said about the linkers and adapters a little bit ago. Okay, now and another important enzyme, which is your alkaline phosphatase. Alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme involved in removal of the phosphate group. As the name suggests, phosphatase. Now, generally, we know, I think you have now gone through the fifth semester, now going through fifth semester, you already know now that most of the kinase enzyme add phosphate groups and phosphatase enzyme remove phosphate groups. So, alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme which is involved in removal of the phosphate groups, and this enzyme is useful to prevent unwanted ligation of the DNA molecule, which is frequent problem encountered during cloning experiments. I have said little bit ago, right? I have said little bit ago that the adapters are unwanted ligated also, because they have a sticky end, so unwanted ligation can occur. That's why we are blocking the sticky ends, 5' sticky ends by OH groups. Similarly, to prevent unwanted ligation, we use alkaline phosphatase. So this enzyme is useful for preventing the unwanted ligation of DNA molecules, which is a frequent problem encountered by us in during your cloning experiments. When the linear vector plasmid DNA is treated with alkaline phosphatase, the 5' terminal phosphate is removed. See, I will also show you the diagram that when the linear vector plasmid DNA, suppose plasmids are circular in nature, that we know. So when they are broken down and make them linear, the 5' of that the 5' of that linear DNA have a phosphate group. This phosphate group is removed by the alkaline phosphatase. Okay, thus it prevent both recircularization and plasmid DNA dimer formation. It is now possible to insert our foreign DNA through the participation of DNA ligase. So to prevent unwanted ligation of DNA molecules, we need this alkaline phosphatase enzyme. So what we do here, you can see the plasmid DNA has been cut open. It has a 5' phosphate group, and it has a 3' OH group, right? Now with the help of alkaline phosphatase, what we do, we remove this phosphate, with the help of alkaline phosphatase. Let us see. So with the help of alkaline phosphatase, the phosphate group has been removed out. If I minimize the diagram, you can see the phosphate group which was present here has been removed out, completely eliminated out. So no reaction will occur now. They will not ligate by themselves. So what we do, we with the help of linker adapters, we are allowing our foreign DNA to be inserted here in that desirable site, cleavage site, and we ligate them with the help of ligase enzyme. So this is the action of DNA ligase to prevent the recircularization or religation of our plasmids. So simple thing, okay, it's not so much difficult if you are studying a recombinant DNA technology. It's much better of engineering type, okay, where we are just like engineering type we are doing. It's much easier than your previous semesters actually, and this is the applications of biotechnology that we do. Obviously, theoretically it is easy, but practically it is very difficult to do this experiment. That how it is possible to ligate in this site only. For that we need confirmation. For that we need selection. Okay, the DNA molecule, the DNA fragment is ligated here. What's the proof? We cannot able to see the DNA, right? So for that reason we do selection. Okay, some selectable marker genes are present in the plasmid DNA, and by reacting with that selectable marker gene to produce the desirable products, okay, or maybe some antibiotic resistance gene which can survive in antibiotic medium. For that it will give you a confirmation that yes, our DNA has been inserted properly in that vector only. So that's why theoretically it is easy. That's why it look like easy. It's a easy chapter. Okay, some DNA modifying enzymes are also there which are needed for recombinant DNA experiments. Let us see one by one. So some authors prefer to use the broad term DNA modifying enzymes to all enzymes involved in recombinant DNA technology. These enzymes represent cutting and joining functions in DNA manipulation. They are broadly categorized as nuclease, polymerase, and enzymes modifying the ends of the DNA molecules, and are briefly discussed below. So these are the DNA modifying enzyme. Nuclease, as the name suggests, it cut the nucleic acid. Now where they are cutting? Endonuclease inside or exonuclease on outer side. Polymerase, as you know, it catalyzes the formation of the DNA, and enzymes modifying the ends of the DNA molecule so that unwanted ligation does not occur, or some component we add like methyl groups for easily identification maybe. So you can know that endonuclease they do internal cuts to the DNA. Okay, DNA polymerase, with the help of DNA template, they make multiple DNA. They make complementary DNA from that template DNA. Now many type of DNA polymers are there, like DNA dependent DNA polymerase, RNA dependent DNA polymerase, right? RNA dependent DNA polymers, I think the reverse transcriptase is there. Reverse transcriptase, they use the RNA as a template to synthesize DNA, right? So let us see nucleases. Nucleases are the enzymes that break your phosphodiester bonds. The phosphodiester bond, as we have studied just a little bit ago, that they hold the nucleotides together. And who participate? The 5 no, of 1 deoxyribose sugar, the 5 prime phosphate group of 1 deoxyribose sugar, and the 3 prime hydroxyl group of another deoxyribose sugar of another nucleotide, they participate in nucleotide phosphodiester bond formation. That was catalyzed by your ligase enzyme, but here nuclease is doing the reverse thing. They are breaking that phosphodiester bond. Endonuclease, they act on internal phosphodiester bond cleavage, while exonuclease degrade the DNA from the terminus end. So as the diagram has been shown, this is performed by exonuclease. They are removing from outside, from the terminal ends, they are removing the nucleotides, while endonuclease make inner cut to the DNA by breaking the phosphodiester bonds. And restriction endonuclease, as the name suggests, as I have said, Why they have named restriction? Because of the discovery that restriction endonuclease identifies certain sequence, okay, and on by identifying that sequence it cause cleavage, it cause cut around that site of that sequence. They are good example of endonuclease. Now there are also some other examples of endonuclease as well, like nuclease S1, deoxyribonuclease 1. Nuclease S1 specifically acts on single stranded DNA or on RNA molecules, because RNA is single stranded. So nuclease S1 can well act on RNA molecules. Then DNase 1. This name you know, you have used them in your laboratory also. DNase. These deoxyribonuclease 1, they cut either single or double stranded DNA molecule at random sites. So randomly they cut the single or double stranded DNA molecules randomly. Then comes exonuclease. Many modifying enzymes are there. Exonuclease 3 cut the DNA and generate molecules having sticky ends. Exonuclease 3, they cut the DNA from terminal ends. Terminal ends mean from the ends of the DNA. Extreme 5 prime, extreme 3 prime ends they cut, and they produce sticky ends. Nucleus BAL31, it is a fast acting 3 prime exonuclease. That means this nucleus BAL31, it cleaves from the 3 prime terminal ends. Its action is usually coupled with slow acting endonuclease. So some of the examples has been shown in this figure. So you can see the nucleus S1. Nucleus S1, what it says, nucleus S1, wait, nucleus S1, they act on single stranded DNA or RNA molecules. Let us see the figure. So this is a single stranded DNA or RNA having 5 prime and 3 prime site. Nucleus S1 act on this single stranded DNA or RNA molecule, okay. Second is DNase 1. What does DNase 1 do? It has been said that DNase 1 cut either single or double stranded DNA molecule randomly. So at random sites, deoxyribonuclease 1 cuts the DNA, either single strand DNA or double strand DNA. Now here it has been shown equally they have cut, but they cut randomly. They may cut here, then they may cut here, then they cut here. Random they may cut. Okay. Then comes exonuclease 3. As the name suggests, exonuclease 3, they cleave the DNA at the terminal ends. Okay, so exonuclease 3 cut the DNA and generate molecules with protruding 5 prime ends. So they make protruding 5 prime ends. That means the 5 prime ends will be overhanging. So you can see, if this is the 5 prime, if this is the 5 prime, this is the 3 prime. I think you can understood. You see that they produce 5 prime protruding ends. At this side they have cut, and on this side they have cut, and producing this type of 5 prime protruding ends. Whereas nucleus BAL31, nucleus BAL31, it is a fast acting 3 prime exonuclease. That means it makes a 3 prime protruding ends, and its action is coupled with a slow acting endonuclease. Okay. Now there are also some other enzymes as well that we have said, and some of these enzymes are has been listed here. Like I have said about this RNA dependent DNA polymerase, which is also called as reverse transcriptase. They use RNA as a template to synthesize DNA. Now this can be extracted from virus, RNA retrovirus. Then some other modifying enzyme like alkaline phosphatase, which removes the terminal phosphate group, I have said. Then polynucleotide kinase, which add phosphate groups, opposite of alkaline phosphatase, right? um, then terminal transferase, also called as terminal deoxynucleotidyl transferase. These are specially used to add nucleotides at 3' ends to generate a sticky ends that I have also said before, to make protruding ends. And it is used in homopolymer tailing that I have said a little bit ago. So these are the some examples. Some more enzymes are also written. I want to specify some important enzymes here, like this one. Sorry. I think I have. Okay. So this enzyme is important also. Also, obviously, all enzymes are important, but these are the specific enzymes that may comes in your examination, like Taq DNA polymerase. Taq DNA polymerase, actually, it is a type of DNA polymerase taken from this organism. T means thermus, this is E, okay, and AQ for aquaticus. So from Thermus aquaticus, okay, CUS, it will be CUS, Thermus aquaticus. From this organism, Thermus aquaticus, we obtain this type of DNA polymerase. Now, why we have obtained Thermus aquaticus DNA polymerase? Because they can withstand at high temperature, and during polymerase chain reaction, we have to increase the temperature to separate the DNA, to denature the DNA fragments, separating them individually into two strands. That's why they are used in polymerase chain reaction, also called as PCR. Then S1 nuclease, as I have said a little bit ago, that they degrade the single stranded DNA and RNA. Reverse transcriptase is also important. Reverse transcriptase is also important. They synthesize DNA from RNA. Many enzymes are there which you have to summarize them. Okay, just summarize them, it will be useful for you. Now basically MCQ pattern is given on your examination nowadays, but you have to still study them. Okay, so this type of short questions may come in your exam. Now the host cells. The host cells are the second thing which are required for the cloning experiments, and for expression of the vector, for expression of our desired DNA, we need host cells. So the host cells are living systems or cells in which the carrier of recombinant DNA molecule or vector can be propagated. To increase the number of our recombinant DNA molecule contained in the vector, we need host cells, that where we have to introduce that recombinant vector having our DNA of interest into that host cell. So there are different type of host cell that can be used. We can use bacteria as a host cell, we can use eukaryote as a host cell like fungi, animals and plants. Okay, plants can also be used as a vector, as not sorry not vector, as a host cell. And that's why I will go for the plants, because it has been given in your plant biotechnology syllabus, the agrobacterium mediated gene transformation. Okay, some examples of the host cells used in the genetic engineering has been shown in this table. Let us see. So normally, if you want to use host cell as bacteria, then you can go for Escherichia coli, also called E. coli. You can use Bacillus subtilis or Streptomyces species. Careful has to be taken so that the E. coli should not be of virulent strain type, because some of the strain of E. coli are extremely dangerous. Okay, then fungi. You can use fungi as host cell like Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Aspergillus nidulans. Animals, for the animals, we can use the insect cells as a host cell, oocytes. Mammalian cells can also be used like the Chinese hamster ovary cells. Whole organism can be used. like the transgenic organisms that we are making, the transgenic cow, the transgenic goat, the transgenic sheep, the transgenic fish, where we are introducing our gene of interest into that particular organism, and that organism express within the genome, that gene is going to be expressed. Now, as you have learned in your plant tissue culture, for the plants, we can use the protoplast to introduce our desired DNA, because protoplast can be easily accessible for getting that DNA. We have removed the cell wall before making, and to make them protoplast, we have used some sort of agents called as, to maintain the osmolarity. We use that agent like sorbitol, mannitol. Okay, and we then allow to introduce our desired gene of interest containing the vector into that protoplast. We can use the intact cells, or the whole plant can be used as a host cell. Now, host cells, besides effectively incorporating the vector genetic material, must be conveniently cultivated in the laboratory to collect the products. General Generally, microorganisms are preferred as hosts multiply faster compared to the cell of higher organism, because microorganisms, their growth rate is pretty much very high. Very quickly they grow, very quickly they colonize, and thus our desired product can be achieved in a very short period of time. That's why microbes are used generally for the production of our growth factors, for the production of growth hormones, insulin, okay, antibodies, etc. Okay, for the prokaryotic host, we preferably use E. coli. And let us see the limitations of using E. coli. Now, every time we use E. coli as a model organism, whether you are doing genetic experiments, in a genetic experiments for the prokaryotic cell, we use E. coli as a model organism. While animals, we use Drosophila, like I have said by T.H. Morgan. But for the genetic experiments, if you want to use prokaryote as a host cell, we go for E. coli, because the bacterium E. coli, its genome has been completely sequenced, and it is the simplest gram-negative bacterium that we know. And these bacteria commonly found in the human and animal intestine, and that's why E. coli is used in present-day biotechnology experiments. The first advantage is that E. coli can double its number after every 20 minutes. When we do the bacterial growth curve experiments, you see after every 20 minutes the E. coli grows. You know the lag phase, the log phase, the stationary phase, and the decline or the dead phase. You record the temperature, you record the time, and you measure the growth of the E. coli cells by measuring in your colorimeter. You take the OD, optical density, right, in the cuvette, in the tube. So as E. coli's doubling time is pretty short, every 20 minutes they divide. Their plasmids along with the foreign DNA will also divide. So if we can introduce our desirable DNA with vector into the E. coli cell as host cell, so at every 20 minutes they are also getting doubled. So millions and millions of copies can be prepared within a day, within a short period of time. The term clone is broadly used a mass of cell, organism, or genes that are produced by multiplication of a single cell, organism, or gene. So clone means just the copy of that particular gene here. So the vector that we are using inserted into the inserted into the host, and as they are multiplying, the vector inside the cell also getting multiplied as well. Thus, we can get millions and millions of copies of our desirable DNA within a short period of time. But there is a limitation. The limitation is that There are certain limitations using E. coli as host. These include causation of diarrhea by some strains. Some strains of E. coli are very dangerous. They can cause diarrhea. Then some E. coli strains can form endotoxins which are toxic and low export ability of proteins from the cell. Another major drawback is that E. coli cannot perform post-translational modification. This thing I have already discussed with you in the previous video. You can use bacteria as a host organism, but if your main aim is not for cloning of your desirable DNA, if your main aim is expression of your desirable DNA, then it's a bit problematic. And if that DNA has been taken from eukaryotic cell, then it is much more problematic, because if you want to express the eukaryotic DNA, if you want to express the eukaryotic DNA, it has to undergo transcription. Okay, that can be done in bacterial cell. It has to undergo splicing, which cannot be done in bacterial cell. That's the first problem. Okay, it can be overcome. How it can be overcome? If I take the RNA and then we can convert that RNA into DNA. So what I am trying to say, the first problem that we will face if you want to insert our desirable gene taken from eukaryotic cell, to be cloned and expressed in prokaryotic cell, the first problem that we will face is splicing. What happened in splicing? I have wrongly written the spelling. SPLICING. So what happened in splicing? In splicing, the exons are removed out. Sorry, the introns are removed out and the exons are joined together. Right? To and s- that exons now will be carried forward for the translation process. So this process can be overcome. How? This process can be overcome if we take the RNA of the DNA that we want to be inserted. If we take RNA instead, and that RNA, that means fully mature mRNA, which has been spliced already, and that RNA is converted into DNA by the help of your reverse transcriptase enzyme, and that DNA is used for our gene of interest to be inserted, then you can overcome this problem. Okay, so this can be solved. Second problem is that prokaryotic cell cannot undergo the post translational modification. Prokaryotic cell cannot undergo post translational modification. After translation, the folding of the protein is required for its stability and for its to function properly. So this type of post-translational modification does not occur on prokaryotic cell like E. coli. So that's the problem that we will face. This cannot be overcome. Okay, and sometimes what happen, when we are trying to express the our desirable gene into the prokaryotic cell, what happen in that prokaryotic cell, that expressed gene protein forms, okay, but it clumps at a site known as inclusion bodies, and inclusion bodies is very difficult to isolate. Sorry, if this is a, I'm again drawing, if this is a prokaryotic cell, if this is the genome of the prokaryotic cell, and suppose a protein has been formed, the desirable protein from our desirable gene taken from the eukaryotic cell, but it has been clumped to form inclusion bodies. And inclusion bodies is very difficult to isolate from the bacterial cell by downstream processing, right? So these type of problems will occur. So for that reason, we use eukaryotic cell. If you want to express the desirable gene into a host cell, we use mammalian cell. We use that particular organism cell. So despite of practical difficulties to work and high cost factor, mammalian cells are also being employed as host. Now to culture the mammalian cell, one limitation is there, it's costly to maintain. The advantage is that certain complex proteins cannot be synthesized by bacteria, can be produced by the mammalian cell. All the splicing machinery, then the post translational modification machinery can be done in mammalian cell. Like for example, tissue plasminogen activator. This is mainly because mammalian cell uh, possesses the machinery to modify the protein to its final form. So mammalian cell can undergo post-translation modification. So if the DNA that has been taken from the our desirable source, that is for example eukaryotic cell, it can undergo post-translational modification within this mammalian cell. But if our main aim is to clone only, then you can use the eukaryotic. You can use the E. coli cell or Bacillus subtilis cells as a host cell. I think you have understood this part. Okay, okay. So in the next video, I will try to discuss with you about the vectors. What are the quality characteristics of ideal vector? This is a common question that normally comes in your exams. What are plasmids again? Then the types of plasmids. The PBR 322 you have also studied in class 12, but little bit details about PBR 322 and your other plasmids like PUC vector, bacteriophage as a vector. That has been given in your syllabus. According to the syllabus, I will do one by one. Then mammalian artificial chromosome. Okay, we will do. After this, we will go for some other things which has been given in your syllabus. I will try to complete the plant biotechnology part by going directly after doing this vector part. I will go directly to the last unit of your plant biotechnology, which is related with this part also, with this recombinant DNA technology chapter also. That is the agrobacterium mediated gene transformation, how the TI plasmid and RI plasmid use as a vector, and how we introduce our desirable gene into the TI plasmid and RI plasmid and introduce into the plant cells by that infection mechanism done by Agrobacterium tumefaciens or Agrobacterium rhizogenes. So that's much for all for today. If you have any doubts regarding this part that I have discussed today, you can ask me in the WhatsApp group. Okay.